7 Premier League teams battling it out in the prestigious Champions League. A solid 3 teams competing in the Europa League, and 1 team making an appearance in the Conference League for the 2026 to 2027 season. This massive total of 11 is more than enough to leave everyone completely blown away, adding even more respect for the sheer power of the English top flight. This dominance isn't just about financial muscle or organizational technology, but also about pure on-pitch expertise. The likelihood of actually hitting that maximum number isn't super high, but the door is definitely still open. Let's dive deep into the details of this highly unusual scenario right now. One of the most highly respected newspapers in the UK, The Guardian, has just teamed up with the world's leading sports analytics company, Opta, to publish an article that might not be very long, but delivers an analytical quality that honestly rivals a mini scientific research paper. Specifically, they point out that while the Premier League title race might be pretty much a done deal, the battle to secure those European tournament spots is still as competitive and thrilling as it's ever been, with up to 13 different teams still holding on to a genuine chance to stay in the fight. A whole bunch of different factors have combined to create this incredibly wide-open situation. Both the Champions League and the Europa League have expanded their scale significantly ever since they introduced the brand new ranking format, known as the league phase. And on top of that, we now have the addition of a 3rd European tournament, the Conference League. Because of this new setup, if an English soccer club manages to take home the trophy in any of these European competitions, it will automatically boost the total number of Premier League teams heading out to the continental stage for the very next season. Meanwhile, the middle of the pack in the Premier League standings is also battling it out incredibly closely right now. There are only 7 points standing between Liverpool up in 5th place and Bournemouth all the way down in 13th place. Believe it or not, this is actually the tightest point margin between the 5th and 13th spots at the start of April, since the very first Premier League season way back in 1992 to 1993. Back in those days, a mere 4 points were all that separated Sheffield Wednesday in 5th place and Southampton down in 13th. But wait, that is not all. At this exact moment in the season, there are also just 4 points standing between 7th place and 13th place. That makes it the second closest gap between those specific spots on the table in the entire history of the Premier League. A total of 9 English soccer clubs have already played in European competitions this current season, featuring 6 teams in the Champions League, 2 teams in the Europa League, and 1 team making its mark in the Conference League. And exactly as we mentioned a little earlier, this overall number could potentially get even higher by the time next season rolls around. So, with all that being said, what are the actual possible scenarios that could unfold from here? There are 2 extra Champions League spots available for the federations whose member clubs perform the absolute best in European competitions during the previous season. And this is all based on UEFA's highly complicated point-scoring system. The Premier League is practically guaranteed to secure one of those extra spots, just exactly like they did last season, because 5 out of their 9 representatives participating in European Cups are still pushing forward to conquer their respective tournaments. Arsenal and Liverpool in the Champions League, Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa in the Europa League, and Crystal Palace in the Conference League. There is also the possibility of getting even more, with up to 2 additional Champions League spots opening up for English clubs. But that scenario would require a super bizarre double standard. they would need to be absolutely brilliant in European Cups, while simultaneously being completely terrible in their domestic league, specifically coming from the likes of Liverpool and Aston Villa.
To be completely specific,
They would need to win their respective European tournaments while also finishing entirely outside the top 5 of the Premier League, working under the assumption that the entire top 5 already qualify for the Champions League. If both of those teams actually managed to pull that off, there would be a staggering total of 7 English soccer teams competing in the Champions League next season. And let's not forget, Nottingham Forest could also earn their own ticket to attend the Champions League by going all the way and winning the Europa League. There are at least 2 spots reserved for English teams. If the top 5 teams in the Premier League secure their tickets to the Champions League, the 6th place team and the FA Cup winner will get to participate in the Europa League. However, if Arsenal, Manchester City, Chelsea or Liverpool happen to win the FA Cup, something that is very likely to happen, and they finish in a position on the league table that is good enough to qualify for either the Champions League or the Europa League, meaning they are sitting right inside the top 6. The Europa League spot coming from the FA Cup will then be passed down to the next highest ranked team in the Premier League that hasn't already secured a ticket to a European tournament. Under those exact same conditions, if both Liverpool and Aston Villa fail to win their European Cups while still finishing completely outside the top 5, this particular Europa League spot will belong to the team sitting in 7th place in the Premier League. If either Liverpool or Villa actually achieves a victory in Europe while also landing completely outside the top 5, the 8th place team in the Premier League will earn the right to play in the Europa League. If both of those teams manage to win their respective European Cups and still finish entirely outside the top 5, the teams ranked in 8th and 9th place will both secure spots to compete in the Europa League. Meanwhile, if Crystal Palace ends up winning the Conference League but actually finishes outside the top 6 of the Premier League, they will automatically step right into the Europa League for the following season. Manchester City has already secured a spot in the Conference League thanks to their League Cup championship, but it is highly likely that they will finish right inside the top 6 of the English Premier League. Therefore, their spot will be passed down to the highest-ranked team that has not yet secured a ticket to a European tournament. Depending entirely on which team ends up winning the FA Cup and exactly how many additional Champions League spots Liverpool or Villa manage to earn, the team finishing in 8th, 9th, or even 10th place in the Premier League could actually qualify to participate in the Conference League. So, is the scenario of 11 English teams sailing out into the big European sea next season actually realistic? The short answer is yes. However, this specific vision would require Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace to win their respective current European Cups, while at the exact same time, Liverpool and Villa must finish completely outside the top 5, and Palace must finish entirely outside the top 6 of the EPL. When that happens, the distribution for the 11 clubs would be as follows: 7 spots for the Champions League, 3 spots for the Europa League, and 1 spot for the Conference League. This particular scenario is incredibly unlikely to actually happen.
in reality,
How many teams actually have a bright chance of making an appearance? According to the analysis from The Guardian, Liverpool is quite unlikely to win the Champions League, and they are also far more likely to make it into the top 5 of the EPL than not. Aston Villa is a very bright candidate to win the Europa League championship, but the chances of them falling completely out of the top 5 are even lower than those of Liverpool. Palace is a strong favourite for the Conference League title, But the constant risk of failure is always lurking in this particular arena. With all of the things that have just been analyzed, there is a high probability that there will be absolutely no extra spots created from English teams winning continental tournaments while still somehow finishing completely outside the European qualification group in their domestic league.
Nevertheless,
It is highly possible that 5 English teams will successfully earn the right to play in the Champions League, and a Europa League spot will ultimately go to the 7th place team, because one of the teams already sitting in the top 6 wins the FA Cup. That simply means that the teams finishing right inside the top 8 in the Premier League this season will be fully eligible to participate in European Cups. Here are the exact percentage chances for each team to finish in every specific position, according to the latest batch of 10,000 simulations for the remainder of the season, which were carried out by the Opta supercomputer. Brighton is the team outside of the current top 7 with the highest likelihood to sneak their way into the 8th spot, achieving this outcome with a probability of 16.8% across all of those simulations. Meanwhile, Brentford is currently looking like a very strong candidate to cross the finish line right in 7th place.
Everton
Has a genuinely good opportunity to step out onto the European stage, while clubs like Fulham, Newcastle, Sunderland, and even Bournemouth have certainly not been knocked out of the race just yet. Crystal Palace's biggest hope of making a return to European competitions relies heavily on them winning the Conference League, but they also hold on to a realistic chance of breaking into the top 8 within their own domestic league. All of those aforementioned teams should head into the remainder of the season hoping that Liverpool and Aston Villa manage to secure ultimate glory in Europe, but simultaneously run out of steam and stumble in their domestic league campaigns. If both of those clubs manage to do exactly that, and Palace also goes on to win the Conference League, the vast majority of the teams in the Premier League next season will be competing together in Europe.
What we just went through
Was an incredibly detailed analysis, absolutely packed with a massive amount of effort when it comes to both the deep research and the actual execution of the piece. And of course, it goes without saying that fans who truly love the English Premier League will also need to invest a good amount of their own time and intense focus to fully absorb all of the complex breakdowns presented by these completely data-obsessed authors. For the remainder of this video, let's take a quick sneak peek at the absolute whirlwind that is just about to crash down on the biggest heavyweight clubs over in England. Starting right from tomorrow evening and heading into the early hours of the following morning, several of the big-name giants will be marching straight into the crucial quarter-final round of the FA Cup. The Premier League might not be rushing back into action this weekend, but to make up for that, in just a few short days, the first leg of the Champions League quarter-finals will immediately kick off with some absolutely fiery and intense matchups. Finally, the EPL will come roaring back to life with a vibrant slate of matches for Matchday 32 starting next weekend. The absolute center of attention will be the massive blockbuster clash between Chelsea and Manchester City. Arsenal has the strict mission of bagging all 3 points against Bournemouth on their home turf in order to maintain a safe and comfortable gap in the standings. Liverpool will have to host Fulham. Aston Villa is packing their bags to march over to Nottingham's home ground. And Manchester United, coming fresh off a remarkably long break, is fully ready to hit the ground running and overwhelm their visiting guests, Leeds United. So, as it stands, The English Premier League representatives are just about to enter the single most crucial turning point of the year, bringing along massive opportunities, but also an endless array of daunting challenges. Analyzing, predicting, and closely keeping track of the exact number of English clubs that will step out onto the European stage next season is definitely a highly compelling aspect to watch out for throughout the remainder of this current campaign.